Killer Frequency has finally arrived on the Switch. It's a comedy horror game that immediately caught my attention when it appeared on the eShop, and it's just a unique premise. You take on the role of a radio DJ tasked with helping the locals survive encounters with a notorious killer that is running around this town. The questions I have are, can we make the right choices to save them, and should you be adding this game to your library? Well, my name's Alex, so this is SwitchCorner, and if you do enjoy this video, consider subscribing for more daily Switch contents. We're starting with story, and in this horror comedy game set in 1987, you take on the role of DJ Forrest Nash. That's a late night radio host in this smaller town of Gallows Creek. Now, as this night unfolds, you find yourself in the midst of a chilling situation when a notorious killer known as the Whistling Man reappears and starts terrorizing this smaller town. With the police taken out of service, so it's actually going to be up to you to not only man the radio station and handle any incoming calls, but also those seeking help from 911 that have been redirected to you. Basically, can you save the lives of the citizens who are being stalked live on air? The game, it blends comedy and horror elements, featuring entertaining dialogue exchanges, definitely some quirky characters, and numerous ways to understand even more about this world if you are willing to explore. I had a blast with the story, and it kept me guessing to the very end. Killer Frequency, from a gameplay perspective, is incredibly unique. It's first person, but you're going to be spending a good majority of your time within the confines of this studio location, pressing buttons and filtering through to that next musical selection. Facing you, we do have our producer as well, and she plays a huge part in understanding what you must do next to advance the night, whether that's queuing up a song, a radio ad, or discussing the situations that are playing out. The controls here are naturally kept simple. We have free movement, and then we can grab objects, drop them, throw them, place them, and inspect them. That's really all there is to the controls. It's a game that's defined by a simple control scheme to ensure your focus is on that narrative, so you can go ahead and save the locals. I do want to add, however, that you do quickly gain the ability to leave the studio and explore the rest of the station, and this will be essential if you do intend to succeed. An example, uncovering the phone number for a local restaurant that may be able to tell you where the student frat party is occurring tonight, because it seems the killer is in the local area. My only real issue with controls, and got to admit here, is no matter how much I tweak the camera sensitivity, I did occasionally find it was difficult to pinpoint some of these smaller objects and interactable buttons. Outside of these controls, we do get text panels as well. These are optional, but they will be great for handheld players. These automatically display on screen. They simply translate any readable object in front of you or in your hands. The gameplay then really is a puzzle experience. Someone calls in, they present a situation, you must now get them out of harm's way. So due to spoilers, I won't use any character names here, but a couple of early examples where they actually use this to great effect. Someone gets trapped in a maze, you must guide them through by using a map. Then there's another situation where you must find information on a character and her group of friends, so you can figure out who is going to be best equipped to handle specific roles in what is, I guess, an escape plan. Characters can die here, and they most likely will on that first playthrough, leading to some solid replayability, but it's worth noting the game, the scenarios these characters face, they never change, so playing it through won't really show you a different, I guess, path. I also noted that if you quit after a bad decision, there is a good chance the game will actually load you back in right before it. I think this game could have benefited from a more aggressive save system that kicks in as you do make that decision instantly, from the multiple options on screen, and that's then going to be before you know the result, adding a dash more weight to those choices you are making. It's also going to lead to a whole lot more replayability, as well as the curiosity would most likely tempt you back in for a second playthrough. The multiple dialogue options as well, they make you feel in complete control, and therefore just that alone builds the tension because it is all down to you. This would have just elevated it that little bit further. The end of the game, though, thankfully packs a brief section where you can review whom you saved and who died, and now I do personally want to jump back in. I wouldn't say it was a particularly difficult game, and I saved a good majority of the cast, but 4 did perish, and now I want that perfect run. I'm actually confident I can see where I went wrong, so now there's that small part of me saying you've got to play it again. Sadly, there's no New Game Plus, however, and I would have loved maybe some randomization in the situation these characters could face, though I do appreciate that could have impacted the quality of the story. All in all, though, it took me 5 hours to overcome with some optional exploration that I took upon myself. My final comments are on gameplay, but one thing you will note on jumping in is the fact this game was made for VR, and that is clear at points from the controls. Picking up one item at a time feels a little like padding, as you need to run back and forth at a couple of points in the gameplay sections. And then some objects like a waste paper basketball and net, they were clearly designed for it, even if I did still have some fun with this. You also can't simply place items down or put them back at times, so you end up kind of throwing them all over the floor, which is kind of like a sign, I guess, of playing a VR game. But thankfully it combats this with a reset objects button in the main menu if things do, get a little out of hand. What I'm saying here is, though, if you can play with a headset, maybe turn your attention to the Quest 2 build. I'm sure it would be incredible. For some reason it's not available on PSVR 2 if that is what you're thinking, but maybe we will see that in the future. That said though, look, even with the Switch build, I've had a great time. The gameplay experience is unique, presenting a mix of exploration, station management, and decision making. Visually, I really like the cartoon aesthetic they went with. It gives me an air of Firewatch, where it's clearly based upon a realistic environment, but it allowed the team to really highlight those bold colours and thick outlines. It's also beneficial because it makes spotting objects incredibly simple. It helps as well that when an object is interactable, it has a handy highlight built in. Character models then are limited, but those we do get are strong, and the studio is relatively rich in detail with numerous items packed in. Some objects that are not important are blurry, which is disappointing. It makes finding the correct answer a little too obvious at times, but that really is a minor complaint. Really, very few other issues, honestly. I noticed some minor clipping at times, and just occasionally a document would be a little too small to read comfortably alongside the multiple dialogue boxes, and the game will pretty frequently ask you to do that as well. The audio is a highlight for me. A game that's built around the audience dialing in needs to deliver in this area, and thankfully I can say it's fully voice acted to the highest quality. The cast, it goes from serious to eccentric with a dash of humour occasionally as well, and it would have been so easy here to lean into the comedy a little too much, but for me they struck that balance perfectly. Our two leads then are particularly impressive as the growing relationship is believable, and the environment then has some basic audio effects, and the music, you can kind of pick and choose the tracks you want to play, and they clearly had some fun with that 80s synth style. You can even find additional records on occasion scattered around the world, which will be added to your collection, though if I had any kind of complaints in audio, a few more records wouldn't have hurt. Overall, Killer Frequency succeeds in bringing a unique narrative comedy horror to the Switch that has a great balance of, humour and tension. Should mention here as well, although this is more slasher horror and it should be relatively easy to handle for most, outside of maybe a couple of tense sequences, it's not a particularly scary game. The real dread here comes in making the decisions. You desperately don't want to make the wrong one. Overall though, I've had a blast. It looks good, it plays well, and it sounds good. And now in the future, I hope to see more of this world because it is so unique. Perhaps then we can see them explore the concept of different situations randomly appearing for longevity, and maybe an evolution of the control scheme dependent on the platform you are playing on. It's a great 8 out of 10 from me, however, and Killer Frequency is a gem that genre fans you should strongly consider. So will you be checking out Killer Frequency? Let me know in the comments with that. Hit subscribe, join us here for reviews, deals, news and lists daily, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.